everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. They're smart, tuned in, savvy, opinionated, humorous, and thought-provoking. I'm talking about our Another View Roundtable pundits, relationship expert Alvean Lyons, political science professor Carol Pretlow, and a blast from the past, journalist Roger Chesley, are here to weigh in on what folks in the African-American community are talking about. From the latest on efforts to mitigate the spread of coronavirus to who really has political influence with the African-American community, and everything in between. Get ready for a great conversation. The Another View Roundtable is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. So in light of all of the concerns about the coronavirus and about protecting ourselves and social distancing, which is a term that we're hearing more and more now, I want to talk to you about a couple of things that are happening within the community. I strongly suggest that you call ahead and make decisions on your own as to whether or not you want to participate. But there are a couple of things that are going on that you may be interested in. Starting with tomorrow, the Hampton Roads Community Action Program is providing Get on the Bus. It's free tax preparation and free credit reports, workshops, vendors, door prizes. It's called Driving Healthy Lifestyles. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Brooks Crossing Center, which is located on 30th Street in Newport News. So that's from 10 until 2 tomorrow. If you want to get some free tax preparation help, they are there to assist you. And on March 26th, from 12:30 to 2 at Cypress Point Country Club, Sharon McGlone is going to talk about her actions and those of 6 other young girls who integrated their schools in Spotsylvania, Virginia in 1963. Now, she is a member of the Virginia League of Women Voters, and she's going to be making that presentation. It is free and open to the public, and you may order lunch on your own if you'd like to go and to participate. You can RSVP at P. Stewart, spelled Stewart, at cox.net. So just 2 items that are happening within the community. Oh, and by the way, the United Way of the Peninsula had scheduled a Stone Soup event on this coming Saturday. That's when people get together and make big meals for the less fortunate. And they have decided, with everything going on with the virus and COVID-19, that they are canceling that for Saturday. If they reschedule, they will let us know. So just some information from the community. So our roundtable is here. They are ready to grab the conversation and take off. So let's meet them. She's Virginia's relationship expert and host of the Lyons Den radio show heard on Hampton University Radio. Ms. Alvean Lyons, how are you?
Good afternoon. I'm great.
Good. Thanks so much. And we did the elbow bump.
Absolutely. Social distancing and appropriate greetings.
He is our largest serving roundtable pundit. Yep, he's been with us since the very beginning, and we're so happy he's here with us today. Journalist Roger Chesley, welcome back.
Barbara, how are you doing? And writing a frequent column for the Virginia Mercury website, virginiamercury.com, in case you want to see some of the recent ones that I've done.
Absolutely. So I've been checking them out.
Keeping my hand in it, trying to. Anyway.
There you go. So happy to have you with us today. Thank you. And she engages her students in political discourse. She is a political science professor from Norfolk State University. Ms. Carol Pretlow, how are you, Carol?
Wonderful. How are you? It's spring break, so I'm wonderful.
Oh, I guess you're right. Well, your spring break is about to get extended, I believe.
Yeah.
And Allison Moore was supposed to join us today, but she had a family issue, so was not able to join us. So we miss you, Allison, but we'll see you next month. And Dawn Hester's granddaughter is getting married, and
nice.
So that's where she is. And so we're very happy. Congratulations to her. So Coronavirus. Oh my goodness. Every day there are new developments, and last night would have actually made my head spin. So, President Trump restricting travel from Europe to the U.S., the NBA ending its season after a player, and now two players, tested positive for the virus, the NCAA eliminating fan participation in March Madness outside of immediate family members, large events like Coachella and South by Southwest canceled or postponed, colleges and universities telling students to stay home and work online. And now the MEAC, which is here in town right now. Welcome, everybody from the MEAC. But they are allowing fans to come tonight, but not tomorrow, Friday, or Saturday. So they're only allowing, as a matter of fact, I will tell you specifically who they are allowing to attend. Attendance on Friday and Saturday, those are the semifinal and championship rounds, will be restricted to players, coaches, officials, event staff, essential institutional staff, conference staff, credentialed media, and student athlete guests. So the rest of you out there who bought tickets and so forth and come to town to hang out, you won't be allowed to go in to see the game.
And I think the last thing that I saw about that this morning was that they're asking people to go to the place they bought tickets at to try to get refunds. But I'm wondering what happens if one of the players is found to have this, then will they do the same thing that the NBA did? I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, you don't necessarily want big crowds there, but that doesn't mean that the people on the court or the referees or the assistant coaches or the people who are covering the games, are going to be exempt from having this disease. So it's a very dicey thing, and I don't want to make light of it, but you do wonder. It seems like a lot of this is being decided almost, I'm not going to say without forethought, but you don't know necessarily what the criteria is to make some of these decisions.
Well, according to the CDC and so forth, they're all talking about the more people you have, the more likely you are, Alvean, to be exposed.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because that's what Dr. Fauci was talking about. And for those who are not familiar with Dr. Fauci, serves with he's the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. So he's an immunologist. Immunologist. Let me get that out. I'm like, how do you say that properly? So, but really, they spend most of their time doing epidemiological studies. So, really, the origins of disease, the incidences, the distribution, the spread, and then ultimately the control of disease. And what he was speaking to was the issue that numbers really point to the expansion of the disease, the amount of contact. And for so many, while 80% of our population is likely to be exposed to the disease, we will not necessarily even recognize that we really have it. It's that 80% being exposed to the 15 to 20% that is susceptible to having significant medical emergencies related to the disease that is the problem. So when you're talking about a large concentration of humans together, even if you're talking about a whole bunch of young people, i.e. the closings of the universities, it's not necessarily the students that they're concerned about. It's that the students can contract it and share it with faculty, because your faculty is likely to be more mature, and that faculty
I like that, more mature.
Indeed, and that
Also known as
faculty
older.
could be at risk. I prefer more mature. So it's really not all just about the individual themselves as much as who the individual could potentially be in contact with, that they may be part of the 20% that is highly susceptible.
Speaking of that, I neglected to say this earlier, but we had planned a special program with EVMS and the Strelitz Diabetes Center for next Friday. Friday's Another View. We were going to be live with a studio audience at the Strelitz Center, based on the fact that diabetes is one of the mitigating diseases that could get worse if you are exposed to COVID-19. We have, did I say Friday?
Yes,
oh
you did.
my!
Yeah,
I
you
meant to
did.
say Thursday. I'm so sorry. Wow.
It's
Even I'm not used to it.
hard habit to break, isn't it?
It's a very hard habit to
Yeah.
break. Absolutely. Next Thursday. But at any rate, you know, we felt that it would be irresponsible of us to pull together a bunch of people in a diabetes center to talk about diabetes, knowing that the possibility of someone being exposed to the coronavirus could happen. So
Right, because
we
those
will-
are immune compromised individuals. I happen to be a parent of a juvenile diabetic. So the way in which you have to orient your life, because you are part of a higher risk population, there are adjustments that have to be made. And it's not about living in fear. It's about being proactive in the protection of one's health.
And I want to talk about living in fear in just a moment. But Carol, I want to get from you. So you're on spring break right now. And the universities, including Norfolk State, TCC, Old Dominion, in our area, Hampton University, and many others around the Commonwealth have decided to extend spring break a week, and then they're going to online teaching. What does that mean for you in terms of how you have to orient your classes, the rest of your classes for the rest of the semester?
Well, for me, it isn't that big of an adjustment because I don't do traditional weekly or exams. What I do is projects. And for example, we'll take a news story and then evaluate it. And each person writes their interpretation of it and the arguments that they would use, either pro or con, and then together as a class we come up with a document based on it, so they can continue their work on that. The constitutional law class now is looking at the Constitution itself and interpretations of it, and that will continue. Media law people are doing the same thing, so I don't have a big problem. But
So a lot of your classwork was already done
online. Yeah.
But you're seeing so many colleges. I mean, I got an alert today, Howard grad, that, hey, we're not going to have classes for the rest of the year. We're either going to go to online. And I have a daughter who's at Johns Hopkins working on a master's degree. And, there's all this changes. Okay, so now spring break is going to last longer. And there's a possibility that, they won't necessarily come back to the classroom afterwards. So, this is, one of the things that, coming up, that so many colleges and universities are canceling in-person classes due to the virus. And so I don't know what the number is, but you keep on hearing about it more and more.
I know the entire UNC system in North Carolina has decided the same thing, most of Virginia and so forth. But one of the articles that I was reading also talked about the hardship, particularly of low-income and minority students that this causes. You want to
Absolutely.
address that, Alvean?
Yeah, because you also, even in addition to low income and minority students, you also have international students. So there are universities that, though they are closing, we have closings from California, Connecticut, District of Columbia, Georgia, Indiana. I'm sorry, but students from India, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan State, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina. I mean, it's an extraordinary list at this point. And so, but inside of each of those populations, in terms of academic populations, you have individuals that cannot go home.
Yeah.
Well, some of them don't even have a home to go to.
So you can't go home. They're going to have to keep some of the dorms open for those students, and the cafeterias open because obviously they have to be able to survive. The other thing too is that they're going to have to keep medical centers on campus open as well. So that's another area of distribution where testing is going to be important, is that being made available to universities as the first line of defense where students are concerned, because typically they will go to the infirmary to say, hey, I'm having these symptoms. Inside of your tuition, you often have insurance to be able to be seen on campus. Then from being on campus, if it's deemed an emergency, you would be going to the emergency rooms. But are we doing that first line of defense to say that, hey, we're getting ready to send a student to you that is testing positive? So that's a whole nother issue. But going back to the issue around poverty associated, even some of the school systems who are now looking at doing an online or stay-at-home schooling experience for students, the first question is, what happens to those young children who this is their only hot meal during the day?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Some schools are already having conversation around being able to transport meals from the buses to the respective homes and drop off. So there are some school systems who are recognizing that they have a more significant population of students that are dependent on school for basic needs, that they're going to have to put intervention practices in place so that those students are still supported. They have also decided that if any of the students do not have online access or internet access, that they will not do online platforms for school if 100% of the students cannot benefit from it, so that it won't be discriminatory, because that is completely unfair. That's something that I can't control as a child means that I'm not getting an education, but my neighbor, my peer is, because their parents have a few more dollars to be able to have access to internet.
You would hope that the school systems can figure out a way. Maybe putting small groups, and I know that could cause trouble. Is there a way to instead of not
doing it at all? Is there a way to be able to do that?
Can we get it so that there is at least internet access for everybody to do that? But
but then you also need a device.
Right.
So even if you have internet access, do you have the device, the computer, to be able to use? And some of the school systems who have larger budgets are distributing computers to, or they have
Chromebooks
to students to ensure that can be provided. So there's a lot that has to be considered when you're making such significant decisions.
Go ahead, Roger. You were making a point.
No, one of the things I'm saying, I mean, so much of this is emerging now because we're trying to deal with the what I would call the lack of leadership from the White House in this, where at first President Trump seemed more concerned about the reports of the virus and how
Stock
this
market
could affect his reelection bid, as opposed to getting on top of it and trying to deal with this, forcefully and quickly, as far back as in January. I mean, one of the things that we've seen in the last couple of days is this effort to classify some of the meetings that have been going on among some of the administration officials, and the fact that also when you demonize science, when you demonize facts, then crises sometimes come up, and then this diminishment of science. You have a culture in the White House that hurts American people. This is the time we need that type of leadership. This is the time when we need people who know what they're talking about, not what's in the president's gut about what he thinks would happen, or whether when it gets warmer, all this is going to be fine. No, this is the time when we need serious facts and people who know what they're talking about.
So, pardon me. I noticed.
Okay,
See, there you go. I just have. Trust me.
Where's your mask,
I'm good.
Barbara?
Exactly. I've seen majority communities come together with bringing in medical experts. I know EVMS recently, for example, had a big forum about coronavirus and what is it and what does it mean and so forth. That a lot of the more prominent nursing homes in this area or assisted living facilities, I guess I should say, have had doctors come in and people explain, what does this mean? When you see the pictures on TV, you don't see a lot of black and brown faces in those audiences. I wonder, for your opinion, on whether or not our community is getting the information that they need, or are we, because the old saying that when everybody else gets a cold, we get pneumonia. We don't know the effect of COVID-19 on African Americans. I mean, we don't know, because we don't know who the people are, who have tested positive because of HIPAA rules and so forth. They don't
with the
tell
exception
you
of the
race,
NBA player.
with the exception of the NBA player. And they outed him, but anyway.
Or in some cases where people have come forward and said, I had it.
Right. You know, I mean, Tom Hanks and his wife came forward last night. But I'm wondering, just as a whole, as a look around Hampton Roads and so forth, is our community getting the right information that they need? Are they listening to a conversation like this? Are they hearing it on, the R&B stations or the hip hop stations? Or, I mean, how are our churches talking about it? I'm not seeing a lot of movement. I mean, tell me, am I wrong?
I think we are talking about it, but we're not making the step into doing anything about it. Because, for example, I think that churches and maybe educational institutions need to collaborate, say Norfolk State, ODU, Hampton, get together and let's plan something that would reach all of the community, but has a particular impact on the African American community.
But they're worried about their own, little thing in terms of how they're going to educate people going forward.
That means that it's going to go viral. It's going to expand even more. So we need to think strategically about, Norfolk State, here we have a nursing program. We have people, sociologists. Let's get together and make a plan to reach the churches. And then from there, come together with a plan. But I haven't seen that done like you.
Are we taking too long, Alvean?
Yeah.
So I have a because of some of the work that I do, leadership work, I work alongside some wonderful pastors, and I get a chance to have conversations, at those levels where the faith community is concerned. And there are multiple, particularly where the Black church is concerned. There are different levels of concern. And that's not to say that people are not still concerned about health, okay? But it is to say that there are some realities that are associated with some of the, I'm trying to find a nice way to say it, but there are certain limitations that sometimes exist inside of the Black church. They're not as well funded as some of our majority white churches, okay? So the distribution of information can be different. The ability to impact the communities in the same kinds of way because they don't have the funding to be able to do it can be different. Concerns, and I'm not trying to suggest that Black pastors are more concerned about money than white pastors are, but because budgets are smaller, the thing that tends to be more true in Black churches is if people aren't attending church, they're not also investing in the church. Where in white communities, even when members don't attend, they will send their contributions online. For people of color, if I'm not here, I'm not paying for it. So there's a different orientation to the contribution and the sustainability inside of Black churches.
So the whole idea of, for example, the Episcopal Church in D.C., Northern Virginia, and suburban Maryland, they've shut down
because I can afford to.
And versus the Black church,
Black
where
churches
you're saying that we can't
are
afford
in
to.
a more challenging position.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
So there's a different way in which some of these pastors have to think about the decision making, because if I make a decision prematurely, it could potentially shut down necessary programs that have to exist for the church long term. So the way in which these calculations are being made is a bit different when you have the luxury of being able to, we have $100,000 worth of reserves that could be used in the community, versus some of our Black churches who literally are in the hole, where you have pastors and faith leaders that are helping to fund the upkeep of the church. And if I make a decision like this could really have a different kind of impact. So I think that they're gauging their decision making a little bit differently and waiting to see, are we going to have to shut down? Because Easter is huge in the Black community. Are we going to have to shut down Easter services
and elsewhere too?
Yeah, there are major calculations that are done differently based on what it is you can afford to do.
You would hope that the usual suspects, NAACP, Urban League, that that they would step up and their allies and say, hey, this is maybe a way forward on this. But I go back to, we've heard a lot about the virus, but we didn't really get a lot of leadership from Washington until within the past couple of weeks, I would say. And I think a lot of people were trying to take their cues from them to say, okay, so what's the way forward? And now you see these other organizations that are saying, okay, we're going to shut down. I mean, the Catholic, the Richmond Diocese, for instance, they're not saying don't go to church unless you're extremely sick, but there are things that we do in church. There's not going to be...
You change the communion, for example.
There's not going to be the sharing of the precious blood like that usually happens. They're saying handshake of peace or gesture of peace that we do. No handshaking or hugging or things like that. That's something that's come out within the last few days. So I still think that we're doing some catch up as a nation, black, white, brown, trying to figure out what's the best way. I mean, so many schools are going to be closed, so many people, so many things where jobs, people are being told to telecommute if you can or if it's possible. I think that it's really just a lot of what's the best way to do this. I mean, we might a few months from now say, boy, maybe we over-responded a little bit, but you don't want to be on the other end where you don't prevent death and serious illness if you can. And, are there things that maybe black organizations, black officials could be doing?
Even just
Sure.
basic information, though.
Sure.
I mean, that's the thing that concerns me is because we know how rumors run rampant. By the way, if you're just joining us, we're talking about current events and coronavirus with the Another View Roundtable. Relationship expert Alvean Lyons, journalist Roger Chesley, and political science professor Carol Pretlow. So just in terms of just basic information, though, I guess the one thing that I would like to encourage our listeners is just become informed. Read, take it upon yourself. Don't depend on others to make decisions for you, would you say? And Alvean,
go to the CDC,
absolutely.
CDC.gov. I mean,
CDC.gov, that's one of the safest places and the most factual places that you can go.
Right. There's all sorts of recommendations out there. Washing your hands, trying to stay away from people who are sick. Trying not to sneeze on somebody else or be around persons. I'll share this story with you. My wife and I went to New York City over the weekend. The planes were mostly full. The terminals were mostly full. Most of the events that we went to while we were there, full. But in church, there was a person behind us who was sneezing, and my wife cut a look at that person so tough. It's like, what are you doing? And it's like, should we leave right this minute? And that is we went through most of the time not really thinking about it too much, but it was something, a small incident like that.
That triggered it.
Yes. And so that is one of the things you're thinking about.
So the final thing on this, and then we're going to move on to our next topic. But I wanted, Alvean, if you would give some words about anxiety and those who suffer from anxiety, who this kind of exacerbates.
Right. That I think that goes right back to your previous point about information. Information is power. Anxiety comes from the not knowing. Right. So it's the sense that you don't have any control over what the outcomes are ultimately going to be that heightens people who naturally struggle with anxiety. The doom and gloom of what could happen is the thing that people really exacerbates the anxiety. So I really encourage people to take the time to do the research so that you are empowered with information. There's a video by, and this is not WHRO or or Another View that is advocating for this video. This is Alvean Lyons talking about a video that I found wonderfully helpful. On YouTube, Dr. Peter Lynn did a video on the coronavirus that was fantastically done, just in terms of very clean and clear information. It's not about panic, but simple things you can do. One of the things that most people don't know about the virus or understand about the virus when they hear wash your hands is because the virus itself cannot penetrate skin. So if you touch somebody with the virus, that's not the issue. It's not going to come through your skin. It's when your hands touch your face that you breathing it in, it's either going to come in through your nose or your mouth. And depending on the constitution of that particular strand of the virus will determine whether or not it's lodging in the nose area or whether or not it moves to the lungs. The lung penetration is what the issue is, because the virus can replicate itself. So we want to keep it away from the entrances to the human body. So people aren't just saying wash your hands to be a germaphobe. They're saying wash your hands so you reduce the likelihood that if you touch your face, that you are creating the entryway for the virus. Knowing tidbits of information like that help us to feel like I can do something personally to decrease my risk. So what I would say to people in reducing anxiety is take time to look up information. Don't go to fear-mongering spaces. Listen to information from professionals who are level-headed about what it is that you can potentially do to reduce your risk. And recognize that while, yes, this virus is not the same as the flu, there is a different incidence. It's 3 times more impactful in terms of mortality rates than the flu. There are still very proactive things that we can do personally and in our households and our social orientations that help to mitigate some of that risk for ourselves.
So we can make smart
We
decisions.
can make better decisions.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to our next topic with the politics, of course.
Okay. Which sometimes feels like the flu also.
Exactly.
I like that.
So Super Tuesday revitalized Joe Biden's campaign for the
South
presidency.
Carolina first.
South Carolina, and then Super Tuesday, Elizabeth Warren, Tom Steyer, Mike Bloomberg, all gone. Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden has come down, although, what is the lady's name that I just forgot?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard, yes, is still in the race, as far as I know. So the black vote in South Carolina and other places has been huge in terms of Biden's ability to be in the lead. So Bernie Sanders went out and he got Jesse Jackson to endorse him. Is that a effective strategy to bring black folks
I
on?
don't think so.
That was cute.
I think there are a lot of young people who wonder who is this
Jesse
Jesse
Jackson?
God, because what is his relevance now?
Right.
We know that Representative Clyburn in South Carolina had an effect, and he can
Absolutely.
probably name, if Biden does win, he can probably name whatever job he wants in the new administration.
For sure.
Because he helped bring him back
Bring him back to life.
figuratively
Yeah,
from the
to life.
dead. But I can't see how Reverend Jackson's endorsement of Bernie is really going to do much difference. It's clear that Sanders has a problem attracting black voters. And yes, he does have young voters who don't always come to the polls as reliably as older voters,
exactly.
as middle-aged and older voters. But he has a problem in states with any large population of black voters. He has trouble connecting with them. Why is that? It's because I think some people are concerned about the Democratic Socialist tag. It's because I think some people, look at some of his policies, the Medicare for All, and don't see it as realistic. And it's because they're trying to figure out, well, who has a better chance of beating? I mean, Democrats want to know, how can we get that guy in the White House out? And I think they have more concerns about Sanders than they do about Biden. And I think all of that plays into it. And we've seen this in state after state in the last couple of weeks.
Well, but Carol, what does it say to you about Bernie Sanders and how in touch is he actually with younger people and with the black community, clearly?
Well, I have talked to some of my students about it, and I think it's because they look at him as, yes, older, but sympathetic and relatable. And Biden, they just don't seem to be connected to. Now, my counter to that is, think about this. You're thinking about who can beat Trump, and Sanders, I don't think can. So when you put it on a realistic when you put it on a realistic level for them, they say, "Oh yeah, I see. It's not just the empathy that I think Saunders has; it's whether or not he can be Trump."
I'm
and
curious,
how.
what do they tell you is the empathy? I mean, what is it about Sanders, since you deal with young people,
Yeah.
what is it about him that is attracting them or that they feel puts him on their side, if you will?
Well, for one, that education for all or college for all and not being, and I had a conversation, over an hour ago in Barnes & Noble downtown with some young people who were like, well, I have student loans, I have student debt. Here is somebody who says he's going to rectify. But then when you ask them, well, how is he going to do it? Because he's got to get it through Congress. Are you thinking about that? This is good philosophically,
And how you gonna pay
but
for it?
practically, how is this going to work? And and how you going to pay for it? And who's going to be the person that who are the people going to be that are going to take the fall for this? Is this concentration on education for all going to mean that our taxes go up or that certain services, particularly in the Black community, are not going to be available? What's the deal here? And I don't think really they have thought through that.
The whole thing. Alvean.
Well, I mean, I always find it interesting. The numbers are always very interesting to me because in Virginia, for instance, Biden carried 63% of the Black vote to Bernie's 18%. So we're talking staggering numbers. We're not talking that he's like slightly ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. One of them's getting invited to the cookout. The other one didn't even get an invitation. There's a huge difference between the way that the Black community is relating. I think it's the same thing on some level. That people don't understand about how we operate as a community. There is transferable love and there's non-transferable love, right? See, Joe choosing to serve with his heart, okay? It's that Maya Angelou thing, people will forget what you say, but never forget the way you make them feel. The way in which Joe served President Obama, there was such a genuine affection and love that existed that he wasn't doing this begrudgingly. He wasn't sorry that he wasn't the president. He honored his role as vice president in a way that it was clear that he wanted the president to win for the nation. So for many people of color, that love that existed between the two of them almost feels like I owe it to you to be supportive of you because you were supportive of him.
For 8 years.
For 8 years. And then to watch your relationship post the job. There's even more bromance going on after the job. So this wasn't you just doing what you had to do. You were doing what you wanted to do where he was concerned. That love was not transferable to Hillary Clinton. Because we knew she wanted the job. She did what she had to do because she honorably served, but many people question whether her heart was in it.
Well,
they did not get as excited about coming out to support her or to revive her or any. The numbers, yes, we know she got the popular vote, but I'm saying the kind of numbers, understanding the Electoral College to do what is necessary to ensure that I get you over this hump. Black people were willing to do that for Joe, and I think it has everything to do with who he was inside of that administration, the Obama administration.
Go ahead, Roger.
And I think if you get a chance, read some of the stories about Sanders' appearance in Michigan, particularly Flint, before the Michigan primary on Tuesday. And there was a feeling that Sanders really just isn't connecting with African Americans. Maybe he just doesn't have the platform. Maybe he my younger son is getting ready to turn 30 this year. He's all in on Sanders, and he lives in Georgia now, and I mean he's supporting him with money and volunteering.
Wow!
But there are people that just don't see him really speaking to them, especially the older blacks, and also he has a lousy record during his Senate years of actually getting anything accomplished. And so, I mean, all of that is playing against him now. You're seeing some pollsters and people who study this type of thing saying as much of the support he got 4 years ago, some of that was the anti-Hillary vote. Well, there's nobody like Hillary running this time, so he's not getting those votes this time.
Right.
So there's all these things that suggest maybe he's not as strong a candidate this year. Of course, he said he's going to stay in. I think Democrats would be foolish to try to push him out before the convention because that would just alienate folks who back him even more. And I think that hurt Hillary after the primaries were over 4 years ago, is that you really didn't see the enthusiasm of his voters transfer to her in the general election.
So he has said that his strategy on Sunday, he's going to be doing a debate, and that his strategy is about calling Biden out on issues that are important to him. I mean, it's not a conceding that I'm not going to be president, but it is in a sense that he's more about, well, what are you going to do about these issues if we all of us jump behind you?
No, I think it's all about Bernie. I don't for 1 minute believe.
You didn't believe what he said?
I don't believe this is at all about the party. I think this is all for Bernie. What Biden has to do, because he has been often has been wooden on the campaign trail, and before South Carolina, his political obituary was being written.
Right.
So I mean, he has to show a little bit more fire. He has to show that, hey, okay, we know you can do the wonky thing. We know you can operate you operate in the Senate. We know you can do that. How badly do you want it? I mean, I think there's some people that still want to see that. Now, the other candidates got out of the way and said, hey, we're going to end and we're going to put our support behind you, because I think they want to see Trump out, and they think Biden's the best vehicle to do that. And it doesn't mean that Sanders can't. But I think there are the bulk of Democrats feel that Biden is the better choice to do that.
I just want to know, though, because in my mind, when I saw Jesse Jackson stand up and endorse Bernie Sanders, what I wanted to know was, what was that backroom conversation that went to get him in the first place? I mean, to me, that is just such a way of showing more how disconnected you really are.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't he have gone with somebody who is still relevant now?
Right.
Stacey Abrams. I mean, why not? If she was so inclined to support you, why not get somebody like that who is relevant now on the scene? I mean, a lot of people don't even remember that he ran for president. So,
and I happened to be there the year that he ran for president at the convention.
I actually helped with the Rainbow Coalition when I was 12, making phone calls. So I was a baby.
But there is at least a generation or a generation and a half who really
don't know. No, you're absolutely right.
of how politically active
he really
was.
is.
And I'm not exactly sure. To me, that meant nothing that he was backing Sanders. And the same would have been true if he said he was backing Biden. I mean, it didn't really mean anything.
Right.
Exactly.
He's not a James Clyburn.
No.
So it's not even an age issue as much as it is, as Roger was speaking to, a relevance issue. Because don't be mistaken that it's not that you need to be 40 years old to be relevant right now, but it is how involved are you in the political landscape currently that people recognize who you are. Because obviously Bernie is practically 80 years old. So age is not the issue. It's relevance that's the issue. And no disrespect to Jesse Jackson, but he just has not been on the forefront of what is happening in our political landscape for young people to really recognize the role that he's playing.
I'm not sure. I think it's been a very long time since he's been relevant.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he came to Norfolk State and he was almost like, I wish I weren't here. I mean, he was sitting on the stage. He responded, to basic questions, but he didn't engage with the audience. He didn't talk to students. He didn't do anything but sit on the stage, say his piece, and go. And so some people still remember that. And when I saw that he was backing Sanders, I was like, okay, so what good is that going to do?
Right. I mean,
Go ahead, Roger.
You wonder sometimes what the value of these endorsements. Not
really are.
All endorsements are not created equal. And I think a lot of times what they do is if somebody that you respect and you think that is still active, still relevant in the political scene says it, maybe you'll look at them. I don't know that anybody's going to just say, well, because so-and-so backs him, I'm going to back him. But maybe it gets you at least to look at that person.
I agree with you there. I just think that you also, on the reverse of that, though, is if you bring someone to the forefront, that could potentially make people run even faster because they're like, you don't get it. So in November, no matter who it is from the Democratic Party versus Trump, are we as a community going to show up?
I don't know. I would have to be honest with you that as Democrats, historically, we like to fall in love and Republicans fall in line. So if we're not feeling whoever it is, there is a chance that we will not show up at the level that we should. What would make the difference in that is how the nominee is ultimately decided. If, to Roger's point, if Bernie was pushed out as opposed to the Electoral College making the decision for us, which is what it looks like is going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
But if it definitively decides who the candidate is going to be, and nobody's arguing that somehow it was stolen from Bernie again, then we have a very good shot of being able to unify the party. And then Bernie is able to talk to the Bernie bros about the fact that bigger than me is making sure that we are not doing this again for 4 years. If we are united in that kind of way politically, I think that we will be fine. The problem will be is if we do not learn our lessons from 2016, we could potentially put ourselves in similar position all over again.
Roger.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make sure that people feel like Sanders got a fair shot, even if he doesn't,
I would agree.
Doesn't do much more between now and the convention this summer. That he is not. That's why I don't want this noise about he should just quit now. No, let him stay in. I think the voters are saying clearly in most states this is what the issue is. One thing, a story I read within the last day or so talked about also. There are about 5 states that were caucuses 4 years ago. They are primaries this year. He was really able to corral the caucus process so that he was able to get many of those states. Well, primaries, much more small d Democratic, I think less shenanigans go on also in primaries as opposed to caucuses. Look at Iowa. And so, that's another thing that's going against him this year. As a party, Democrats want to be as unified as possible. Black people also have to be make sure that their voices are heard. And let me just interject something else. I think we have to be, as a people, very concerned about some of the nonsense that's going on in places like Texas and California, where some people were in line 5 to 6 hours during the primaries. This is craziness. And what's going to happen on election day in November, if that was the process you just had the one party for the most part that was voting that day.
Not only that, but the mayor of Jefferson, Kansas.
Was it Kansas City?
Missouri.
Was it Kansas
Missouri?
City?
Kansas City.
I thought it was Kansas City.
Kansas City. Yeah, the mayor of Kansas City went in to vote, and they told him that he could not, that he wasn't in on the rolls.
And fortunately, he posted some of that and was able to get that squared away within about an hour or so. Right. And he said he did not want to vote by a provisional ballot. They should be accepting him. It apparently was just some type of administrative problem that took place. But it does go to say, if he can have a problem, I mean, he's the elected leader of the city.
Right.
What about just
Joe Blow?
Joe and Jane Blow?
Well, and not only that, but would Joe or Jane Blow have gotten the same kind of consideration in terms of trying to figure out what happened.
How to rectify
and so
it,
he could come
right.
back and vote again.
Well, I don't know,
too.
but look at what happened in the first place. I mean, it seems like to me, you talk about having a photo ID. I mean, his face has got to be all over the place. How could you not know that
He's the mayor.
And he had a record of voting in that particular precinct.
That's right.
Several prior elections.
I thought that too. It's kind of like, how do you let the mayor of the city come in and you don't know?
You don't know.
Well, not only that, but apparently the poll worker was reversing the name. So he put his last name in the first name column and first name in the last name column.
But also understand that we every 4 years we often have people who don't necessarily get involved with on that side of the ledger until like the days leading up to the election or the day of the election. We're not talking about all of the precincts being manned by people who do this all the time.
True.
And I just want to bring one point in really quickly, as we're coming close to the end of the show. I get a lot of questions about why hasn't President Obama endorsed Joe Biden yet. So let me just be clear about a couple of things where that's concerned. One, President Obama has the greatest social political capital inside of the Democratic Party. If he puts his toe on the scale in any direction, it will unequivocally be seen as choosing the next candidate. You cannot unify a party while simultaneously affecting the outcome. So he understands the political impact and social consequence of making a decision like that. So he's choosing to stay out of it. So whoever is chosen, they were fairly elected or decided upon, and then his job is to unify the party once that decision is made. You cannot expend your social political capital prematurely and ultimately damage or fraction the party. So for a lot of people who ask that question, I want to be clear that it's not accidental and it is not a slight on Joe. It is because he understands the long game of what's necessary in order for us to be able to operate as one political party and then ultimately as one nation. We're still American above and beyond being Republican or Democrat or Trumpian for that matter. We still have to do a job as one country when this is done. And over and over again in poll after poll after poll, he and Michelle Obama have the greatest social political capital in their ability to lead us towards a healthy dialogue and discourse.
Wow. Guess what? We're out of time. Thank you, Roundtable, as always. I so appreciate all of your help. I just want to remind our audience again that next week on Another View, we had planned to broadcast live from the EVMS Strelitz Diabetes Center in front of a live audience. But as a precaution against the spread of the coronavirus, we will bring the show to the studio and forego the live audience. So if you have registered, just plan to tune in next Thursday at noon as opposed to going to the Strelitz Center. We'll still bring you the information you need about diabetes, which disproportionately affects the African American community. Find out how to avoid it. And if you have it, give you the tools you'll need to manage the disease. So join us for a special broadcast called Blood Sugar Rising. That's next Thursday at noon. And that's our show for today. If you'd like to hear this show again or share it with a friend, please visit our website, anotherviewradio.org. Download the podcast. You can also find the podcast on any platform where you normally get your podcasts. We're all there. And while you're there at our website, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. We're still rebuilding our mailing list, so if you haven't had a chance to sign up, please do so. We appreciate you, and you can also find us on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Victor Bowen was here to answer phones, but you guys were listening today, so we appreciate that. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Join us again next Thursday at noon for Another View.